You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to OklahomaHOF on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is the Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. So a huge shout out to Governor Anatobi for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them. Do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my two golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Banks, where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode. We are in Edmond today, a repeat guest to the podcast, but it has been, the first time we did a podcast was November 12th of 2018.
Golly, so that's
almost 6 years. Yeah, it was episode 28.
So one of the first ones?
One of the first ones. Okay. We're now in the 630s at the moment, so it's been a while. But yeah, it gives me great.
Cool that there's that many interesting people in Oklahoma.
There is a lot of interesting people in Oklahoma. I'm never going to be out of a job. It's great. But the voice you're hearing today is return guest from Exotic Motorsports, Eliud Villareal. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for having me.
Mate, it's a bit of a change since 6 years ago.
And just a little bit. You know, we've grown in size. We haven't moved much in location. I mean, because we originated maybe, 100 yards, if that, from here. Which is really cool to see the growth from a small 3,500 square foot facility whenever we did the first podcast, we had just opened in June. Yeah. So we were not even a year. Yeah. And then so now, thankfully, we've been very blessed, and now we're in a 20,000 square foot facility and cranking out some cars.
Which is not big enough still, right?
It's crazy because I felt as we were building it and looking at the footprint, I'm like, I'm already out of room. Yeah. And which is a great problem to have. It makes hail season a little easier because we can put cars inside and not have to worry about stuff.
Dude, Oklahoma weather, it can't be fun to be in the car business. And that's one thing that I remember bringing a friend out here from back home, and he's in the car business back home, and he couldn't believe how much inventory dealerships and places like car sales places carry.
Because back home, it's like a boutique style, right?
Yeah. It's kind of like the Tesla model, right? They just kind of have a showroom and they keep the cars in a warehouse, because we kind of struggle with space. But here it's just like, you've got, some of the big places have hundreds of cars on. And hailstorm comes through and... Yeah. That's not fun at all. No. A lot has changed since, almost 6 years ago. for people listening that might not have heard that first episode, give us a little bit of context. What's the business? How did it start? And what gets you here today?
Yeah, so we started the business back in 2018. My current now ex-business partner and I started it, but we just had a vision for a boutique style dealership, where people could come and enjoy buying a car, because the car buying experience isn't great. I hate it personally, especially whenever you go to a traditional dealership that you get stuck with a sales guy that is there because he's trying to make a paycheck instead of, living out his passion. And so we just wanted to give people an opportunity to buy somewhere where there's an experience. And, it's definitely a long story, so I don't want to keep up this podcast. So you guys...
I'll link the one below.
Yeah, go watch that episode to hear how we got started, because it's definitely it's an amazing story and a great testimony of just the way God opened doors and just being obedient and following that. But yeah, that's what originated.
Talk a little bit about like that opportunity and the scene, and the scene here and the scene that you kind of grew up in, from Yukon, and just kind of the car scene in Oklahoma, and kind of how you got started in cars.
So the car scene, I think, has really changed within the last probably 4 years or so, in the sense where it used to be more fun to go out and go to meets and cruises and stuff like that. But I just feel like the upcoming generation and the generation that I grew up in, when it came to the car scene, there's just a different respect level. You respect people's property in our generation, and I feel like for some reason, there's a huge takeover scene, right? Where it's just these kids, which it's crazy that I'm saying that because I feel like a kid, and now I'm that guy, right? It's like, oh, these dang kids. But they're just not respectful. We don't want to go to a place where you're doing burnouts and revs, and it's just, we don't want that. And so when I grew up, that wasn't a thing. We would go out parking lots and just hang out and admire people's cars, different builds. It could be classics, it could be exotics, doesn't matter. There was a respect level there. Now it's just different. But what's crazy is that looking at where it all started and to where it is now, there's definitely a lot more higher end cars. And so I don't know if it's just a generation that, we grew up with is now becoming more successful in their careers and transitioning from the original cars that they had to now, your Ferraris and Lamborghinis and stuff like that. Because I can definitely say in the last 6 years, you could be driving. Before then, you might see an exotic out in the wild a couple times a month, maybe. I feel like it's almost daily in Edmond now, and in Oklahoma City. And a lot of people, they ask me like, oh, well, is it, are they Thunder players or, your basketball team? We've only done business with 2 basketball players, out of all the cars that we sell. And it's just everyday people that just have passions and work hard and want to reap the benefits of their work.
Yeah, no, you're right. I've been kind of going to the coffee and car scene here for a while, and you see, you'd be lucky to see like 3 or 4 exotics show up.
So
now
when you
it's
first
like
started coming to Cars and Coffee, where was it still?
It was North Park Mall.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So
Brad was still doing it. North Park
it was
Mall.
before it went to Chisholm Creek.
Yeah.
And even that transition from where it was in North Park to now, because now we're at Remington.
Yeah.
It's been a big dynamic. So.
Yeah, you'd see one row, right? And then it would be, you're kind of like sections, if you will.
I don't even at North Park. I don't even think it was a row. I think it was maybe like
5 or 6 cars.
Yeah, 5 or 6 cars. Right. It was like half.
Yeah.
And then Chisholm got really cool because he had that whole, and it was really, because most exotics are colorful, right?
Yeah.
And so where we parked right there with Razzoos and the art on their wall, like it felt really, really cool.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's what Remington's missing is just extra.
Yeah. It
nice,
just doesn't have a natural section.
Yeah,
right?
It's just like an open parking lot. But
yeah, I don't know. I haven't been to the Remington one as much as I kind of wanted to go to the Chisholm one.
Yeah.
Right. Like the Chisholm one was kind of like, oh, I'm going to be there every month, regardless if I'm, going to take a car from the dealership or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just kind of fun to show up and hang out. The Remington one, it just doesn't feel as homey, I guess.
Yeah, and it doesn't. I don't think it flows well. But I mean, they're in their first year, so I'll give them grace. And I know they're figuring it out and whatnot. But yeah, the setup is just the parking is you have more space, but it doesn't flow.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
but it's nuts to see that many vehicles of that that monetary value show up, right? And every time you get like, who is this guy? Oh, he's just moved into town, or he's a new business owner, or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Like, he's not in the and I'm not going to say club, but like he's not in like the usual guys that show up every month that you see.
Correct.
You know?
Correct. Yeah. It's not your usual. It's not Reza and Andy's
buying
and stuff
a new
like
car.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
you know,
else.
it is someone else, which is really, really cool. Which makes my job a little bit more difficult because, you know, I feel like if someone has an exotic car in Oklahoma City, I know who they are. Mm-hmm. And there are times now where I have found I don't know who they are. And someone asks me like, oh, I saw this car the other day. Who is it? I was like, I don't know. I have no idea. Yeah. You know, which is great. But I feel like with us being here, it has given people the opportunity to say, hey, this is achievable. And I don't have to go to Dallas to get information or support on it.
Yeah.
So
and to that point too, we're in a great area because you got Michael across the street who is here to service all the vehicles, right? That was the big draw to Dallas too, right? It was like, I got to send my Ferrari to Dallas or whatever it is, my McLaren, whatever. Like, you've got Steve and Michael across the street who will pretty much do everything you need.
Absolutely. I mean, they've done Veyrons, you know, they'll do it all. So
that obviously takes away. And I think a lot of maybe because of COVID and everyone, and I hate to talk about COVID, but it's true, is that everyone was like, I'm not going to wait anymore, right? I'm going to go buy that car.
Man, that's a good point, yeah.
You know, or I'm going to go take that trip or whatever it is. Yeah. And if you're in the car world, I'm going to go buy that car. Sure. You know, and then you kind of got an added excuse to talk to your significant other to be like, hey, like, we should do this. Yeah. And then when you start talking into it, you realize that it's actually not a bad investment if you buy the right ones.
If you buy the right ones, yeah. And they're more affordable than what people think. Yeah. They think you have to be this uber millionaire to have a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. And when in reality, if you look at the price points, cars today are expensive. You go buy a brand new Escalade or Navigator, I mean, you're spending over $100,000. Mm-hmm. An F-150 costs you $80,000. Mm-hmm. You know, they don't know that for an extra, you know, if you're looking at an Escalade for an extra $80,000, you can have that 458 behind me. Like, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. And you pull up and that thing looks a lot more expensive than that Escalade that, you know, every other soccer mom in Edmond drives. But that's just the reality of it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, during COVID, I think people realized, well, one, they had a lot of time to sit and think, but they got creative and figured out a way to make it happen. Mm-hmm. But then that's one thing that we help with too. You know, we have different avenues for people to be able to buy these cars and enjoy them too, where you don't have to just pay cash. You know, so
yeah. Let's dive into kind of how things have evolved. And obviously, you started in 3,500 square feet. Back then, did you think, I want to have a detail bay, I want to have all this space, I want to have like a full service bay? Like, take me through the last 6 years of, you know, how, and I know God's a huge part of your life and faith is, and how that has opened up doors and how things have just weaved and how business works in, you know, and has worked in your world. How's that been, man? What's the update and where are we at today with everything you got going on?
So we'll go back to the beginning and kind of how we'll walk through. There has been a lot of challenges that nobody tells you whenever you're starting a business you're going to have. They say it's going to be hard and, you know, oh, well, the first year is difficult. And in reality, I've felt like the fifth year was really challenging. And I think it's because you grow exponentially as a business and then you plateau. It's like you have that initial wave of, oh, this is new, this is awesome, you know, and that increase of success, but then it plateaus. And then at that point, you've got to ask yourself, okay, something's got to change because we have to, and it's not necessarily the increase of business. It's not like, oh, I just want to grow and keep growing. But there becomes a part where you have to sustain, and it's like, do I want to pour more into this to just tweak it a little bit more? And you have to ask yourself, it's like, what do I want? Do I want to just stay smaller, or do we have the capacity to grow a little bit but still be comfortable? And that's probably been the most difficult part that no one tells you. Not to mention you have outside factors that affect your business. You know, right now fraud is absolutely rampant. And I think when we first had our podcast, I can't remember if we had the incident with that Corvette or not.
I think so. It was so early on, right?
It was early on. I think it was in the spring of 19. So we might have not been in. But anyway, long story short, on that car, we sold a car and it ended up being a fraudulent identity. Someone used identity fraud to buy the car. And per our agreement with the lenders that we set up our financing with, we have to buy the contract back. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, no problem. You know, we've got insurance for that, right? Well, as you start diving into insurance, you start finding out as a business owner that a lot of times insurance doesn't want to pay. They try to find every which way they can to get out of paying a claim. It's a lot more difficult than just an auto claim. Like if you're in a car accident or something happens, it's very cut and dry. You have one guy that hit you and you got hit. You got to figure it out. So there was a loophole in this policy that I had that because the car was not technically stolen and we gave them the keys, that they're not going to cover it because it was trickery or fraud. And so our first year of business, I think our gross profit was only like $65,000. So we had to give it all back pretty much to the bank. And so those are the things that people don't tell you. You know, you might have these challenges. And then so it's like how to get through those challenges. And looking back, it's like, man, if I only had those problems now, because now we have to protect ourselves against. So it wasn't even. We had an incident a few months ago where, all across the country, when you transport a car, there's a page that you go on and you put your transport on or your load on, and the transporter picks it up. It's called Central Dispatch. It's owned by Cox Automotive, largest automotive platform in the country. They own Auto Trader and a whole bunch of other platforms like that. So you go on there, you put on your log, hey, I'm going to ship this car from Oklahoma to California. Broker picks it up, assigns it to a driver, they ship it. So and now it has been nationwide, and a whole bunch of exotic dealers are getting targeted, and unfortunately we were one of those. And what is happening is that there's somebody overseas. It's an organized crime network overseas that is hacking that system and posing as a broker, or the posing as a company, and the broker reassigns it to that company. Well, the guy that's posing as a company, it's a real company. They're insured, all that stuff, but they're intercepting the load before it can get to the actual company and hijacking loads. I'd probably say hundreds, maybe thousands of cars have been affected.
It's like a new version of Gone in 60 Seconds.
Oh, dude, it's like,
right?
yeah.
They're in a container and they're gone.
They're gone. Yeah,
right?
It's absolutely terrible. And then so, I want to assemble like a Fast and Furious team to go get these guys, hunt them down,
Right.
and because we kind of did. We had a couple of people go to. So what happened is we had a Ferrari that was picked up here. Everything looked legit. And then we realized that, the customer never got their car. And on the bill of lading, whenever they received it, it went to Carrollton, Texas. And so we sent some guys down to Carrollton, Texas. And as we're finding out about this, we're finding out that other people are also dealing with this. And these guys, within a matter of days, they stole a 488. The 488 was from our shop, but another dealer got affected with a Pista, a Rolls-Royce Ghost, a Cullinan, a Huracan. I mean, it's
set it hard and fast.
It's a major, major crime ring. And a few weeks later, after all that went down, there were 6 arrests made. 2 of the guys that were seen in the pictures on our car. So there's hope that maybe the car might still be here. I don't know, because 2 of the cars, that Pista was recovered and the Rolls-Royce was recovered. So we're hoping that there's still, hope of finding those.
No one would tell you that, and no one would think to tell you that at the start of your business, because you wouldn't think about it. You wouldn't know.
All you think is like, oh, I'm going to go sell cars.
Yeah, exactly.
It's way more than that.
Yeah.
And so kind of the journey of going through these things, I have learned that, you mentioned that God and faith is very, very important to me, and it is, because my faith has gotten me through the last 6 years. If it wasn't for that, I don't know how I would get through it. And it's really funny because you ask yourself, it's like, why am I going through these challenges and these struggles? And I had read a verse of the day, and if I remember correctly, I think it was in Corinthians, and it was pretty much just talking about how we go through these challenges and God walks with us, so that way whenever someone else or one of our peers goes through the same thing, that we can be the light of God for that person, right? And the minute that I stop reading that verse, I get a text from a customer, and this customer says, "Hey, I don't know if you can put any feelers out or not, but my Ferrari got stolen on its way back from getting serviced in Boardwalk in Dallas." And I said, "Well, let me just inform you on what's going on." And so it was almost like parallels, right? It's like it's the whole thing of what has got me through these last few years is just trying to be obedient and listening to that prompting and that Holy Spirit to just, you're here to serve. And what we get to do through here in selling cars is just what we do. But there's a deeper purpose through what we do to serve other people. And it's just like I went through that to be able to be there for my client. Now we've talked, and he's also a business owner. So it's the conversations that we get to have with other business owners that don't get to have those conversations with other people, because who do you relate to? Like I said earlier, no one teaches you how to do this. They don't tell you these expectations that you should have or things that you might go through. And so it's really, really cool to see how God has just used all of those events and even other things to be able to be there for other people. So that's the hard part of it. And then you have your goods and bads, and it's been great. The part of the good things that have happened is just the relationships that we've made with people throughout the 6 years, the employees that we've been able to have. And it's funny because we were selling, I think, probably 20 cars whenever when we first had our podcast, and in April we had a record 60. So and it's taken a little bit of a recess last couple months. I think we're getting into a time where it's questionable to see what the future is going to look like, going into election year and everything like that. And so, but needless to say that it's just been, God's been great, and we're still selling some cars. So, yeah, it's been a journey. Yeah. It's been an absolute journey.
Well, and also I think, you have a map somewhere in this building of places you've sold cars all over the States.
Yeah.
But now it's worldwide. Because you guys are selling on the internet. And that's the thing too, for people listening that haven't heard the first episode yet, is that, Eliud's business is predominantly online. And so that means the entire world. And so I'd love for you to hear you talk about just how, that sets you apart from your competition, and how you've been, that's led to your success as well.
So there's been people before that have tried doing what we're doing here in Oklahoma City that I've heard of. Growing up, you would just hear of these small stores that might have some cool cars in here, here and there. And even whenever we were going to open, people were telling me that it wasn't going to work. It won't be successful. Oklahoma City doesn't have a market for that. Now Oklahoma City is growing, but before then, there was a lack of the internet, and people would, they'd have this small mindset of you can only sell local. And with the power of the internet, you can sell global. And so we took advantage of that. We do a very good job of representing our vehicles online, so that way whenever you take delivery of your Ferrari or your Lamborghini or whatever it is, you know exactly what you're getting. If anyone ever tells you that the car is perfect and it doesn't need anything, they're liars. Every car, even new cars, have flaws, especially Ferraris. So we have a YouTube channel where we do a walk-around video of every car, and we show you its perfections and imperfections. And I think just that honesty of being crystal clear, like, hey, the car's not perfect. It's a great example, but this is what you're going to be getting. And it has made people across the world feel comfortable buying sight unseen. We're working right now on a Supra that the deal should be going down. It's going to Russia. But we've sold cars to Dubai. We sold a Subaru to Tokyo, which is really cool because the S209 didn't go. It wasn't a JDM car. They only made it for the U.S. market, but people overseas wanted it. So that was a pretty interesting deal. I would have never expected to sell a $90,000 Subaru back to Japan, but it was pretty fun. So yeah, we've been reaching all corners of the world.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the good things that car does, and not just the car community in general, but Eric is silently in the room getting ready for a Red Line for Kids event today, and obviously that's just one part of the good things that cars does, because every kid, every car guy remembers that experience as a kid. For me, it was a friend of mine who was helping me when I was playing golf and gave me a job. He had a 458. And the day before I flew back to the States, I called him, just said, hey, thanks for your support this summer. I really appreciate it. He gave me a job. I didn't work at all. I just played golf, but I was on his books as working, in quotes.
Yes.
And he picked me up in his 458 and just like, this is 2013, 2012. And I was just like, this is the greatest thing ever, right? But cars does great things for us, and would love to hear you talk about, the good that cars does, not just with Eric and Red Line for Kids, but in the general sense as well.
Yeah, so cars have always been, I think, a great piece of conversation, and I've always just seen them as tools, kind of like you just mentioned. They're tools to be able to have conversations and serve other people. It's funny how, so Eric's in the room, and Eric and his son Chance are the founders of Red Line for Kids, and essentially what they do is they go to children's hospitals and they take exotic cars. There's a group of exotic car owners that go out there, and they allow the kids to take their minds off of what's going on, the hardships that they're going through, and just enjoy a little bit. And just the excitement that you get to see on their faces whenever they see cars that they only see in video games, and they get to sit in them, feel them, smell them, all that stuff. It definitely brings joy, and even to the parents, because now as a parent myself, whenever we first had a podcast, I didn't have any kids, and now I've got a 3-year-old daughter. I couldn't imagine what those parents go through, and so we're able to give back to them and just give them a glimmer of hope through cars, which is crazy because you wouldn't think that a car could do that. A lot of times people see these cars and they think, oh, well, they're just CEOs or business owners that just have too much money and they don't, but everybody, almost just about everybody that I know here in the car scene, they have a servant's heart, and they give back where they can, when they can, and they just use their cars as conversation pieces to get that kid to come sit in it at the gas station or whatever. And you don't know what they're going through, and you don't know what that pivotal moment might do for that child. Like you said, you were playing golf and you sat, for you it was a 458, and you sat in it, it was like, wow, and so
I was also like 22 years old at the time as well.
A big kid, right?
I was a big kid, yeah.
But even then, it's like it does something to you psychologically that it's like, I can do this, and it gives you that push, we talked about Red Line for Kids and the charity. We also partnered with another charity last year called Heart and Home Makeover, and talking about giving hope to other people. What they do is they will furnish a home for actually a living area. They turn it into a home for women, that might be coming out of incarceration or drug addiction, men too, but most of the time it's single moms or anything like that. And we're a donation spot for them. So even though cars is what we do, again, going back to that servanthood, it's cars just tie that to it. The amount of humility that you get whenever you're able to serve and give back, and it puts you in check. It's like, none of this matters. None of this behind me matters. but if we don't steward this correctly, then we're not doing our job. Even to the smallest things to where, so for example, I'll just touch on Heart and Home a little bit. If they're coming out of a program of rehabilitation or anything like that, they might have some government assistance to be able to put them on their feet, to give them a place to live, a roof over their head. But it's almost like an empty space. They go there, they don't have enough money. They're just now getting back on their feet. So it's almost more debilitating going home after working hard and being in an empty spot. And so what Heart and Home does is they come in and they furnish the whole home. And, they're 1,200 square foot, 900 square foot areas. But what they're able to do with so little is life-changing. And what really got me is that you would think that if you're getting gifted a bed, couch, chairs, whatever, that's the biggest thing, and that's the biggest positive of what that person got. Mm-hmm. We asked one of the recipients one time what was her biggest take, and she said bath towels. And we're like, after a bed and a couch? And we're like, why bath towels? And she said, well, I just have just enough money to go to work, pay for gas, come home, pay my bills, but I didn't have enough money to buy bath towels I was drying off with yesterday's clothes. And that's just gut-wrenching. So it's like, we can do something. We can help. And so we're a donation spot because, being in a more affluent area of town, people remodel because it's Tuesday. There's no rhyme or reason.
Right.
And so using those things to be able to then give back and give someone hope is what Cars has allowed us to do. So it's been, that's the fun part. That's what keeps me going. I mean, it's sometimes you get your challenges where you get stolen cars and stuff like that. And you're like, why am I doing this? And then we're just reminded that we serve a greater purpose.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And seeing them as tools, right? Like it's, and there's plenty of Instagram posts about, go buy an exotic car because it'll put you in clubs and put you around people that you should do business with. And that's all true. And there's plenty of examples of that. And, the relationships you guys have with Michael across the street, right? With some of the vendors that you have is because of that. And you've been in the scene quite a while. But when you talk about having a real impact to someone who could care less about like the color of my Lamborghini, right?
Yeah.
Because they need bath towels, as simple as it is.
Yeah.
Like you're making, and there's so many examples of doing like drives, right? The toy drive and all the other cool things that the guys do, especially at Cars and Coffee or whatever it is. Like car community is just special place. Every community, regardless if it's cars or golf or anything. Like you have your bad apples. It's just human nature.
Sure.
But I would challenge people to find out how many of those groups actually do more for the world than people who have enough disposable income to spend $250,000 or maybe more on a car, right? That still have a good heart that go to do awesome things. So, what's been some of the cool moments then? And also you mentioned like charity and stuff, but over the last 6 years, we're in a 20,000 square foot building. You've got some business stuff that's still coming with a detail bay and great team here. Yeah, tell me about some of the cool things and the successes that have happened in the last 6 years.
So to answer one of that question, and then it kind of ties in what you said earlier, did we ever imagine ourselves having a detail bay or a service center or anything like that? And the answer is no. But that's just another area where we feel that we can make an impact and we can serve and extend our brand. We already do a great job in sales, and we want to deliver that same level of excellence in a detail side and a service side. But man, the cool part about this is just seeing the growth, and it's really neat that we're literally 100 yards from where we started, because every day whenever we walk out that front door, I'm reminded of where it began. And I think the coolest part is just the relationships that you're able to, we met through cars, right? And just the different experiences that you get to have, and hearing these things. Anytime you hear a Ferrari fire up in the showroom, even if you're in the back room or whatever, something cool just fired up. And but I guess the coolest part is just building it from the ground up and seeing seeing it all come together.
Yeah. To that point as well, then, of just kind of cool things and stories, and it all comes down to people. You must have some stories of just people you've never met before, just see your stuff, kind of been following you from kind of afar from a while, and just rock up and be like, this is what I have, this is my collection, I live down the street. And can't say names, but is there any experiences like that of people that just, yeah, I'd love to do business with you, but and I have an entire warehouse full of Ferraris or whatever it is. I mean, we know the names and we know the people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to share a part just to people listening that might not have any idea that, yeah, Oklahoma's cool, but for the car scene, Oklahoma's really cool.
It really is.
And no one really knows about it.
There's some hidden collections, and it's really, like you said, you were never. People think Oklahoma like, oh, you guys are riding covered wagons and horses. It's like, no, we're not. It's cool getting to meet those people, because they'll come out of the woodworks to us, because, like, again, we're talking about cars and that common ground, and they have a warehouse full of Ferraris, or there's a gentleman in town that he's got a collection of all red cars, and I think he might have been on the podcast,
Maybe,
but it's hard.
I've definitely been to his spot.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, you have 600 and some odd people, so it's hard to remember who all's been on it. But it's just stuff like that you're just like, you would have never known. And they're the nicest, most humble people, that you'd ever meet. And so it's getting to meet them and just shake their hands and have conversations has been really cool. And like you said, it's because they see the sign and they see what's going on, and they want to find out what the hype is.
Can you tell a story about setting a record in Oklahoma for the most expensive car sold? Are you allowed to tell that story?
Yeah.
I can cut it out if we know.
No, I can. Yeah, I can. I don't think there's anything. It's just Ferrari being Ferrari,
okay.
Right? I mean, we've all heard the stories of, Ferrari tries to control everything, and they do. Even their franchise stores. People have asked me, like, well, do you ever want a Ferrari franchise? And the answer is no, I don't.
Because I don't want a boss.
I don't want to. When the executives aren't in town, we've got connections across the country and really good friends at some Ferrari franchises, which is really cool. And nothing against Ferrari. I love the brand. I have a few myself. But it's everything that you hear about them is true. You can't just walk in and buy one. They want to set this level of exclusivity, and when the executives come in, they empty out their showroom. Their showroom typically looks like this, and they're used Ferraris, because you can't get new ones. But when their executives come in, they take all their cars out, and they only have 3 on the showroom floor to make it seem like you can't get one. So it's just, they have it down to a science, which has been one of the greatest things that they've done is just by building their brand. But needless to say, one of their cars, their high-level cars, an 812 Competizione Aperta, which is, you have to buy a lot of Ferraris to be able to even get asked to buy the car. You can't go in and say, I want to buy it. They have to say, hey, do you want it? And it's almost like you can't say no, because if you say no to that one, you can't get the LaFerrari replacement or whatever. So there's a gentleman here in town that is a Ferrari collector, and he's one of those guys where you're like, you would never know, and nicest guy. But he went on a Ferrari buying spree, and he didn't just buy your everyday Ferraris. Like, if it was a 458, it was a Speciale. And if it was 488, it was a Pista Spider, or F12 TDF. Like, they're high level cars
because they were good investments.
Yeah. And he bought the 812. This is where they were kind of like, we didn't get in trouble. It's kind of like a slap on the wrist, and it's like they asked us nicely to take our posts down. whenever we post the car for sale, because that car is not supposed to be for sale on the used market. They do sell, they privately trade and sell, but you can't, when Ferrari sells you a new one, you can't sell it for a certain amount of time. And they know that, so you have a Ferrari portfolio, and if it leaves your portfolio and goes into someone else's, they know that that car has transferred hands. And the original guy that was allowed, which is ridiculous, allowed to buy this $800,000 car can get in trouble.
Yeah.
So that $800,000 car, because it's so hard to get, immediately when you buy it, increases in value, almost doubles. And so we had a client that had one of these cars, and he just wanted to sell it, because it's just like it's too nice to drive, and it's one of those where it's sitting and it's an appreciating asset, and you buy that car to run up your ranks in Ferrari. Yeah. And he's like, I could use this money for something else, or buy multiple cars that I can enjoy with this one. And so anyway, whenever it was a few months ago, whenever we first moved into the building, and it was actually the first car that we listed for sale at the new facility, and we had it listed for $2.6 million, and it sold in a week.
Yeah. Not bad for your $800,000 investment.
Not bad.
From the original guy.
Yeah. And so that's the thing. It's like there's that part's pretty interesting. And whenever you have Ferrari reaching out to you and saying, "Hey, you need to take this down," you're on the map. Yeah. Right? Like you're seen. And I heard from other people that people were talking about us nationwide because we were the only ones with one for sale, because you're not supposed to. And, yes, I'm aware of how all that works. But what's wrong with a little bit of publicity?
Yeah, right? Exactly. It's good. And
what are they going to tell you to take it down?
Done.
We did.
Exactly. The other thing that I love, though, is I know we've been talking about fancy cars for a while now, but you sell everything, right? And there's people listening, it's not just a Lamborghini. And yes, it might, a small percent of the car world aspire to own a fancy car, right? That's just the addiction that we have, because it is an addiction.
It is.
We're always scrolling something or looking at wheels or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But for your everyday world as well, like the husband who's going to come in here, or maybe the wife is going to come in here that wants to buy a Porsche or whatever it is, their significant other can also sell a Tahoe or sell a truck or whatever it is, and you sell everything.
We do sell everything, and we actually get a little bit of you always have people on Facebook and social media talking like, oh, well, what's so exotic about this car? But what they don't realize is that we'll get it on a trade. Yeah. Because I don't go hunt for cars. I don't go to auction. I don't go buy cars or anything like that. All of our inventory is supplied by trade-in, or just local, clients and friends that we know that want to sell their car, that they don't want to deal with the regular dealerships and how they work, because we do a lot of our stuff on consignment, take a small percentage, and the owner of the car retains the majority of the profits. But if it's a good quality car, why wouldn't we sell it? Why wouldn't we bless someone with the opportunity to buy from us, where they don't have to feel like they got taken advantage of at a regular dealership? If it is a Tahoe or an Escalade or anything, I mean, heck, the other day, we've got a 100,000-mile Lexus. Well, it was a one-owner car. They bought it brand new. They maintained it. They kept it, and they upgraded to a Mercedes, a newer car. Why wouldn't I sell it? You can't find those cars, right? And so, even though the exotics is our specialty, we do sell everything as long as it's quality.
Yeah. Well, and you're selling also to someone who might be their first car, right?
So that's another thing too. We've had so many people. We had one of those that I got some grief for was a Ford Escape. It was a Ford Escape, but it was like a 2008 model. The car was sub $10,000, but it was very, very nice. And we had a customer that has followed us for 6 years from Tulsa, and so it's his first car. That means he's been following us since he was 10. And we post all of our pictures online whenever we sell a car to a customer up front with a sign. And that 16-year-old wanted that picture, and he was able to do it because he bought his first car from us. Yeah. And so That's what it's about. So you're right. I mean, it's maybe that person that wants to buy from you, but can't afford the Ferraris or the Lamborghinis, but it's still delivering that quality service. And in reality, you're not going to drive these every day. Yeah. So why not sell that whole family, their Cayenne or an Infiniti or something that they're going to drive, and then their kids and their relatives, because what happens is that it spreads like wildfires. They get that. They get that experience, they get that taste of what we're about, and they want to share with their friends, how it went.
Well, I mean, I can't wait to hear in 10 years' time or maybe less that kid has now bought something else from you and something else. Sure. And then, in maybe 20 or however many years, I mean, who knows? I mean, kids that
she walks in and buys 16, a Lambo.
Yeah, 16-year-olds are making a lot of money these days.
Yes.
It's going to happen at some point. All right, finishing up, because I know you got to work today. What car are you searching right now? What are you Googling? What do you want next?
Oh, man.
As of right now, because if I ask you the 30 minutes, it'll change.
Personally?
Yes.
So it's really, really funny. I found the car that I've been hunting for 20 years. And you ask, how's that possible if you're 33? You couldn't even buy cars 20 years ago. But in 2003, I know, and I'm probably going to get a lot of.
Hey, you bought an F-150 a few months ago. That was a special car.
I bought an F-150,
as well, so I'm sure you got a lot of crazy.
And that's the one. That's the one that I found that I've been hunting for 20 years. For some reason, back in 2003, whenever I walked onto, because I'm sure you did this. I think we talked about it the first time we were on the podcast. You would go to different dealerships and just look at cars, right? So we did that too. My dad took me to a Ford dealership, and I remember walking into the Joe Cooper Ford in Yukon, and I saw a 2003 anniversary Harley Davidson F-150. Had the supercharged engine out of the Lightning, 4 doors. I wanted him to buy it. To get to experience that supercharger whine and, just have a cool truck. But he ended up not buying it. And so I told myself, I said, I'm going to find one of these one day, as close to new as possible, and I'm going to buy it. And I've had 2 since this one. The first one I bought had 20,000 miles, and it was nice, but I used it as a daily driver. And I sold it whenever we found out that we were pregnant and having a baby, because it was too nice to put a kid into. And so I sold the F-150 and bought my wife a Cayenne. If that makes sense. How these trucks, how special they are to me. And I was like, I'll find another one someday. And I actually spoke it into existence. I just didn't know it would take this long. I said, I'm going to find one that some old man had. He bought brand new, kept it in his garage, never drove it. He's going to pass away one day and his family's going to sell it. And I said, it might cost me $50,000, but I'm ready to do it. Yeah. And my sister tagged me in a post 2 months ago on Facebook of a guy in Lawton, nonetheless, an hour from here. Family estate, he passed away. And, but I thought she just tagged me in it because he was selling some cars. And so I was searching through the docket, and I saw pictures of a Corvette, and behind the Corvette I saw the two-tone of the truck, and I was like, I want that. This is it.
I don't want a Corvette.
This is it.
Truck.
And so I went through and I tried looking for it, and I found it, and it had 2,100 miles.
He'd never driven that.
He never drove it.
Oh, wow.
He never drove it. Had 2,100 miles, climate controlled. Like, this was it. I spoke it into existence. And so I went there to buy the truck, and it was an auction. And I was asking a friend of mine, because I had just we just added an SF90 into the collection, and I was more excited about hunting this truck than the SF90 that we ordered.
It's in a custom color.
It was a custom color, signal green, Aceto Fiorano. It was. We went in and spec'd this car.
Yeah, this is a car that's on people's walls. It's a
poster
their
bucket list.
Yeah.
And I'm over here getting more excited about a 2003 F-150.
But that's cars, though.
That
Trucks.
is.
That's the world we live in.
It's just that appreciation. And so I went down there, and my friend said, you need to have a number in mind that you're not going to go over, because you will do something stupid. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so we did a little bit of research. Like, what's the number? It's like 41. I won't go over 41, and because you also had the buyer's fee on top of that, so you have to add. I think it was like 10% or something.
Right.
It's like, all right, 41's my number. And I'm there, and it's time to bid. And I was actually just going to bid online, but my wife was like, what the heck? Let's make a day trip out of it. Let's go down there and let's just do it. And so we go down there, and it's time to bid. And I let these other guys bid it up. And at the very end, I get in on it to try to, because I know it's close. And there's this guy that came up from Texas, and I was standing behind him bidding. And he didn't know I was behind him, but the auctioneer kept pointing in my way. Every time he would bid, I would outbid it. Mm-hmm. And he kept pointing, because I was literally right behind him. And so he's like, why is the auctioneer pointing at me? I'm like, why is he raising my bid? And he turned around and saw me, and I was just raising it. Yeah. I could see the disappointment in his face because he was after the same thing. Needless to say, it got up to like 38, 39, and then it got up to 41 real quick. And it went over 41, but I said, you know what? This is it. I'm not going to have this chance. Yeah, I'm not going to do it. Yeah. I'm not going to find this again. And so I ended up going a little bit higher, and after buyer's fees, it cost me $48,000, which was close to that 50 that I said. I know what it's going to cost me, and so that truck's here. It's hunted. It's done. It's a keeper forever. That's probably been the most fun I've had in hunting a vehicle, and I think the excitement of that being in an auction versus like going to Ferrari and ordering the SF90. It's that like you're fighting for it. It's someone else wants it. Mm-hmm. Who wants it worse? Yeah. And so,
but in some of the clients that you have, they're fighting for like, and the bid is going up $50,000, not $1,000.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's the same rush.
It's the same. It's the same
different
rush.
number.
Yeah. But after that, now that I've got that one, I'd probably. I think I need to add.
You don't have a Porsche in the garage yet.
No. Well, I have Eric said, or a Boxster. I have a Cayenne. Yeah. Cayenne Turbo is what my wife drives. But I do a GT3. That's the one that's the one that's next. I don't know if an RS or a touring. But it's sad to say that the cars are going. They're different. They're not going to be.
You've got to go back kind of 2018. Yeah,
to really get something has some character and has some soul. And I think the GT3 is going to be one of those last ones. So, if I can just find a great spec 992 and just be the last of the last and just have one to hang on to.
Great. Well, mate, it's been a pleasure. I know things are starting to move around you. Your boys getting ready to sell some cars, getting busy.
Let's do this.
Eric's heading to Redline for Kids. I'll put the link to that down in the description too. You guys need to check that out.
Yeah, it's a great charity.
Great follow on Instagram. Yeah. See smiling kids' faces. But people listening, I'll put links to Exotic Motorsports Oklahoma in the show notes. And we'll catch you next episode.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Mike.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my two golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame, They're awesome. Citizens Bank's where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC, and hopefully our pups will run into each other.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.